Hey, what's going on, everybody? You're listening to the SANE Show, the show about nothing and everything. I'm your host, Cliff, and today I have senior writer and producer with HGTV, Valerie Carrillo. How are you doing this evening, Valerie?
I'm doing good. Thanks, Cliff.
Good. I'm so excited to have you on the show. Finally, I know we've had to reschedule a few times, so I'm glad we were finally able to make this happen. I'm super excited to have you on, and super excited to talk about the things that we're going to talk about today.
Great.
So, really quick, before I introduce the topics, I want to take a moment to acknowledge all of our listeners in all 60 plus countries. Thank you guys. Love you guys. Appreciate you guys. And if you're listening and you don't already follow us on social media or Apple or Spotify, be sure to check us out on Instagram and Twitter at SANE_show. Again, that's SANE, SANE_show on Instagram and Twitter. And then you can find us on Facebook at The SANE Show. Again, on Facebook, that's The SANE Show. So today we're going to be talking about entertainment skills outside of the industry. And then we're going to have a conversation about the creative process. Following that, we're going to have an interview with you, Valerie, so that the listeners can learn more about you, the things that you do, and then all the fun things that go along with that.
Great.
So let's go ahead and hop right into it with the first topic, entertainment skills outside of the industry. In the conversation that, I had with you prior to the show, just talking to you, learning about what you do, you're on the marketing side of HGTV. And I just thought it was really interesting, learning about your background. It just got my brain going again, because one of the things that came to mind for me is, we oftentimes could find the skills in the arts to entertainment, media, or even, visual art itself. And obviously those skills are very much practical in other areas. And it's not always because you have some of these skills, like you have to actually be the one or have jobs where you're the one actually creating the content that's being put on television or even YouTube or any of these platforms that these contents are being shared on. So if you could just kind of speak on that a little bit, as far as your thoughts around that, especially doing what you do.
Okay. Well, first of all, I am a writer producer. So in making promos, so we handle a lot of like promos, but I think there's a lot of things that as a writer producer are very applicable in other industries. Writing is universal. So a good writer is going to be needed pretty much in any business area. And then there's also, as a producer, I've got the project management skills. And so, I think those are applicable, especially in almost every business. So if the bottom dropped out on the entertainment, I think I could definitely, some of the areas that I would probably look into would be like, maybe going into more digital and social. But, you can really kind of go anywhere. And I think it goes anybody with an art degree or even theater degree and radio, television, film. I think, all of those kind of set you up to look for jobs. Kind of any industry can take somebody with our skills, because you are really good at analysis. So you figure out problem solving. And the one thing that I think people that are more artistic and definitely, theater side, you can also interpret people's feelings and emotions. So I think a lot of times we kind of tap in very easily to what they call the EQ, there's IQ and then there's intelligence IQ as well. So that's one thing. So you can kind of read people's emotions and maybe their motives. And then we can also kind of, there's the whole technical side. So we're good at coming up with creative solutions, explaining the concepts. You also know video production and audio production. And so you literally can take something from creative and take it all the way down to the finished, which a lot of people don't have that skill. And you can also walk into an area and kind of see and visualize what's going to happen. And so those are skills that people that are in the arts I think have the ability to do a lot easier than people that maybe aren't trained to do that initially. It's not that somebody that's not trained can't do it, but I think learning that is, definitely something that they're going to have to figure out. You're trained when you go to art school and radio, TV, film, and when you're in college. So we kind of have a little bit of a window when you're walking into it as to what to expect. And the other thing is communication. Although I think sometimes our industry can be really bad at communication, but in general, we are really good with public speaking. We're good with getting our ideas out and explaining them and showing how they can be creatively solved. We're usually good with getting people's attention, writing. It's kind of in the communication. And then, like I said, with the project management is kind of under that organization, and everybody could use somebody that is organized. A negotiation, that's something else a producer does, is you're really good with negotiating, trying to persuade people, multitasking, time management, the ability to play well with other people. All of those are things that can be used outside of our industry.
Yeah, you hit on some really good points. One of the things I was thinking about, because even as I talk to other people that are creative, especially podcasters, obviously, because I am a podcaster. And I always tell people, like, these skills that you develop in this business are just amazing. Like, because oftentimes people will just focus on, okay, this person is just a creative. But then, like, being able to take and look at, like you said, the technical skills that go into that. So like with a production, like, you have to schedule it, you have to plan it, you have a timeline that you work on, you have to write the scripts or whatever, and you have to do the editing, and depending upon how big or small the production is, will also determine how much responsibility that you have. And because even I sometimes I sat back and thought about it one time, because I always tell people I used to book shows for up and coming music artists, and I think about it now, like getting them into venues, and so like understanding that process, and also help, having worked with people that have booked talent before, like I took all of that and I book talent for myself now. So having to reach out to people, having to convince them to come on the show, and having to present something to them, that kind of stuff. So like you said, right, the negotiating, the communicating, because especially like at least for me, like as my platform has grown, the more serious I have to take it, and also be more polished, right? Not just as a host, but as someone who wants people like yourself to come on the show. Right? Like, is this like you see where I'm getting at? So I totally agree with you when you talk about the skills that are developed through this business or in this industry. And I think oftentimes that's missed by people.
Well, it's like there's a ton of soft skills. Now, there are hard skills that you learn, that other people have, like specific software, like After Effects or stuff like that. We also have that, but that's not necessarily transferable to every industry. But the soft skills, like negotiating, you were booking talent, working with difficult people, and and learning how to play well with everybody, and trying to get so that we're all trying to get the job done.
Yeah.
Those are really important skills. Working within a time frame, that's definitely, we have very tight deadlines in this industry, and so that we've got to turn around, and sometimes we can move them there, but other times you can't, and you've just got to do what you got to do to get the job done. So, and I think some of the people, I know that the people I work with have solid like work, they will work long hours to get whatever it is done. So there's been plenty of times when I went to work at 10 o'clock in the morning and worked till 5 o'clock in the morning the next day. So it's thankfully those days, I have not many of those days in a very long time, but we will do whatever it takes. And I don't know if you'll find that, I don't think somebody that has banker, they're used to working like insane jobs. So I think there's definitely our industry, the bottom drops out. It's good to know that I feel pretty confident that I could move to any industry and get a job. but I love being a creative person. So I think I'd really want to stay and be a writer producer.
Yeah, that is awesome. That really is. And I agree with everything that you're saying as well. All right, we're back. So want to have a conversation with you about the creative process. I'm really excited about this one. I guess because it's just one of those things that, like, I don't know, like when we talk about the creative process, it's always exciting, and largely because I'm always interested in what inspires other people as creatives, and because there's something that can be taken from that. And I know for me personally, I try to find inspiration in as many things as I can. So that's why I'm always intrigued by what inspires other people, especially like musicians. And one of the examples I wanted to throw out there was like Kendrick Lamar, my favorite rapper, and like how he has a very eclectic taste in music. He listens to jazz, classical, even pop music. I know he mentioned like Taylor Swift one time. It's just interesting to see how people are inspired. And, I just kind of want to hear about, what inspires you, especially because in our conversation, I remember you mentioned like you like listening to music. So I really just want to just have a discussion about that as far as inspiration or the creative process, but and how important, inspiration or getting inspiration is important to that. So I'm going to go ahead and let you take it from there.
I think when I'm first handed a project, the first thing I do is kind of a research thing, and that's kind of figure out what it is, what kind of show will I be promoting, who are the talent, what is budget, but then comes like the incubation time where you just kind of let those ideas kind of swirl around the head and you start looking for inspiration. And for me, it might be just writing down words or phrases. Maybe I might find it in magazines, or I might find it, just kind of watching commercials. And in listening to music, I think is a really good way. As you said, sometimes it's just going through. I love Apple Music or Spotify and just kind of listening to that. And I'll start just throwing some music that I think just kind of speaks to that particular project in kind of my own little personal playlist. And sometimes I'll go back and I might look at maybe even using some of those tracks for the license and use it as music for the particular spot. But like I said, there's other ways to do it. Sometimes it's just going to galleries and looking at artwork, like I said, or, movie trailers, and just, gathering thoughts, ideas, colors, images, photography. If I'm going to be doing a shoot, what kind of tone am I looking for? Just ideas that, almost creating kind of a mood board, just so that you can just start thinking about how is this going to play out. And other times it's just going for long walks, clearing your head sometimes, getting away from it all and just thinking. Sometimes it's nothing. Doodling is another great way. Like I said, the writing down words, I always have like notebooks with me. I always have a notebook by my bed, because there will be times when I wake up in the middle of the night and I've had a dream about work or something. I'm like, oh my God, I gotta write this down. And so, or I'll type it as I see something, and I'm constantly writing things in my, my memos on my phone. I can't imagine doing my job 20 years ago, because it's like I use so much things like playlists in the memos on my phone. And before, it would just be like sitting there dragging around my notebook or something like that, and having to have like pads of paper everywhere, or just a bunch of CDs and stuff, where I was constantly buying CDs. But now it's great. It's all digital. I can create. So it's made, the technology has definitely, I think, helped the creative process. And it definitely, there's, as we were talking earlier, technology can be, your biggest friend, or it can be your worst nightmare. So, but I love it for the most part. Then you just start kind of combing through some of those ideas, and you figure out what's garbage. And, and as you get closer, sometimes you're panicking because you've got that looming deadline that I talked about earlier. But for me, I actually work well under pressure. And so at this point, it's like, okay, hey, maybe this piece of garbage that I thought was bad isn't so bad after all. And it just starts coming together. But I like to come up with ideas that are like thinking really big, out of the box, super expensive. And then I also try to come in with other ideas that are a little bit cheaper, that maybe we could just use existing show footage, that we can do like a clip-based thing, but maybe with a really cool piece of music or with some really cool graphics. Because you never know, even though that really expensive idea that you had, they may come back and they may kick it and say, we don't have, no, that's too big, but they may decide to use it for a different project. And so it may actually, so no idea is bad really in the end.
So true.
And so you can always come back and take some of your old ideas that maybe didn't muster through, and you could kind of brush it off sometimes for other shows, other things. So, I think artists and musicians and stuff, they kind of go through a very similar process where they're just listening, and absorbing, and then you can kind of spit it all out. Like right now's the time, now that we've all been kind of, stuck inside. I would think next year that I would hope that a ton of artists have used this time very well to just use it as a really good inspiration moment, 2020, even though it's a crappy year, that next year, maybe all of a sudden we're just kind of like great music and great art that will come out of this. Is that I'm hoping that's what artists will use this 2020 as a time for. Unfortunately, I did not think about that until I thought about it early on, and then I did nothing. But I was like, this has been really good. Like, I've been stuck inside working from my home. Why didn't I do something kind of creative? Like take a picture of me coming to work every day and, putting it to a video or something like that. I'm like, I just thought about it. And, because I'm on my third season. It's like, it's now fall.
Yeah.
The leaves are falling. So I've gone through 3 seasons of this, looking out the same window. And I'm like, man, I should have done something, It's
Right.
but it's like stuff like that. Where's like all the great, so many things have happened this year. You've had all these protests and stuff. So you're thinking, some great protest music might come out of it, or great protest art.
Right.
Here, we should have had a lot of time at home to work on this.
Yeah, seriously. I mean, you hit on quite a few things, especially when you're talking about like getting out, right? And I think about how I went to the lake actually earlier today to just go out there, meditate, and get some peace, solitude. And I even took a picture, and I put the picture on Instagram when I got home, and I thought about it. Or I went back and looked at it, I thought about my experience, and I'm just looking at the picture and, just kind of getting my brain going, and like just to be out there and have that escape is an experience, and it definitely helps with the creative process. Because I just think about like when you have time to be in nature, decompress, and it's almost like it just allows your mind to open up, right? Get rid of everything that's cluttering your mind, that might be pressing and all of that kind of stuff, and just empty your head for a little bit and just really be in the moment. So, and I think that really helped.
It totally helps with the creative. It really does. Because there's times when you've got like all these projects, and sometimes you just need to just forget it all, walk away, and just go sit, meditate, as you said. Exercise is also a really good way, but just decompress and step away. And then when you come back, you're actually stronger. You might actually find the ideas faster. Ideas might just come, when you learn to relax a little bit. So very important piece.
Yeah, that's so true. And even all the way up, because I was actually wondering about this shortly before we got started. I'm like, okay, does listening to music count? Because as far as like after like I get my notes together. So before every recording, I get my notes together, but then I just go listen to some music, and like I usually jam out before I get on the phone with everybody. So like even before talking to you, like I'm jamming out to some new jazz music, smooth jazz music I downloaded a couple days ago. And I was just thinking, like, because I'm not creating anything, but at the same time, like for me, it like gets me excited, because I'm always excited to do these, and gets my blood flowing.
Yeah, like my husband and I actually, he's a camera operator, and so he's been home quite a bit because there's nobody's for the longest time nobody was shooting anything. But he and I like things very quiet where I'm working, and he is like working and has got the music cranked up, and I'm like, okay, we've got to come to a kind of happy. And I love music, but I'm not like cranking it at the highest level, the decibels and stuff. And anyway, so we've now, like, I will walk away for an hour and he uses that time to listen to the music. You can bang on his drums or whatever. But other times he has to wear a headset if he wants to really know. I'm like, I can't have that when I'm in the middle of a Zoom meeting.
Yeah, that's too funny. All right, now I'm going to ask you some questions, Valerie, so that the listeners can learn more about you, the things that you do, and all the fun things that go along with that. So I'm going to go ahead and fire off with this first question. In your early days, you started by cutting little promotional material for a local network, but you were never really taught how to. How did you learn how to cut and create promotional content?
Actually, in college, I was a radio, TV, film major. So I took this one ad writing class that ended up being probably one of the most valuable classes that I took in my career. And so it kind of helped me to think creatively, look out of the box. And so when I first got my job as you said, it was local TV. So it was in Dallas. And we were just pretty much promoting a bunch of talk shows and B movies. And honestly, that was probably just a super fun job because we had the freedom to play around with stuff, think really out of the box, do crazy things. And sometimes it worked. Sometimes we were told to kind of tone it down by the management, but they gave us a lot of freedom. And so that actually really helped me kind of get some neat stuff on my reel. And then I was able to kind of move on from there. But it was just one of those things that it's 30 seconds. So you just you're writing like a commercial. So that is another thing that I always did is I'm the person that's watching more commercials on TV. And so I think by just absorbing and seeing how commercials are written and paying attention to that, you kind of get a feel for promotional copywriting for television. And you get better as you go along. So it's all copywriting really. And so it's just, I think having that freedom and stuff kind of taught me how to actually do that. As far as editing, most of the time, I just kind of learned on the fly. I pretty much work with editors now. So I'm not really working and doing my own editing most of the time. I know how. Most of the time what I do might be cut something just really super rough just to give them an idea of what I'm looking for. Or maybe I'll do a paper cut on a script and just kind of find the bites and just kind of paste it out. But my job working with an editor is very collaborative. So I might write the copy and then I'll have some ideas for a lot of what kind of bites and stuff that I want to put in there. But we may end up changing it as we go in and start building things. So what I start with on my first piece, on my first cut, may not even be what we end up with because just things kind of change and evolve. So you decide to kind of pivot a little bit and go to a little bit different direction. And then, of course, as you go through all the approvals, and we have like layers and layers and layers of approvals. In fact, that's what I found going from more local, more into network is that the layers of approval. And I think it's kind of the same way when you get into agencies, more and more people put their eyes on it and you end up, so literally what you had at the beginning is nothing near what you have at the end. But so it's the same with graphics. I'm working with graphic artists and I'm working with people that are in audio. And so, you have a whole team of people that are working on one 30-second spot, or actually it ends up being a campaign of several different spots. But the, all of these spots are kind of similar in tone.
So from an outside perspective, in-house promo probably doesn't sound all that different from an ad agency. What are some of the differences between working for an in-house promotional department, working for an ad agency, and working for a trailer house?
Well, in-house, there's one client. And so your focused is on, specific areas of the advertising for that one client. So my client right now is HGTV. In the past, it's been other networks that I've worked with or the TV. And so, we're focused on creating off-air and off-channel campaigns. And then, we're also doing stuff that are more off-air, like billboards, magazines, social advertising. And then we also create things like sizzles that might be for PR department or advertising, but the one thing that in-house, they know the brand very well. They have a good understanding of the culture and the philosophy and all the internal processes that are needed for that particular brand. The outside agency, they have to be briefed on what the goals are. And so they aren't necessarily connected on the culture or kind of what the philosophy is of our particular brand. So that's one thing that when you do hire an agency, they oftentimes can be a really good partner, and they definitely have like the marketing experience and not just in one area. So they might be really good to kind of help build with strategies. And like I said, they can kind of, a lot of their creative teams and stuff might help us kind of think outside of the box. So they are really good to be partners with. Like a trailer or kind of a creative house, they also don't just focus on one client, but they're more of on the creative side. So they're kind of helping you with, literally, we work with a lot of outside agencies like that. And so they're helping us. Sometimes we just use them to help write. And other times we're going to them where they're actually helping us with the actual editing and graphics. And, and then we end up finishing things in house. They're great partners. We have limited, there's a lot of times there's like limited abilities here. And so we have X amount of editors that we're working with. So it's nice to be able to go out of house, but we do have to work with them because there are certain things that we, like I said, about the whole internal processes and stuff that also come into play. So sometimes we might just have them deliver, go so far, and then we bring it back. Like I said earlier, we'll bring it back and we'll finish it and we'll version it out and stuff internally. So, but all those, I think all of those are very important in our industry. And, I think it's a great, especially if you're getting your start, it's a great way to either go with a network or get your foot in the door in an agency, and you can always kind of bounce from those three places. Another thing about ad agencies and creative houses is they often come in with much different perspectives that we hadn't even thought about. But there is the cost side. We can definitely, when we have bigger budgets, those are great resources to tap into. But on the day-to-day smaller budget stuff, the in-house it's amazing what we're able to create in-house a lot of times.
So that leads into my next question. A promo is meant to do a lot. It has to compete with ads for other things, bring awareness to the brand, and bring awareness to the show. How do you define success for promotional pieces?
I think ratings is one of the biggest keys. I know for a promo, we know it's been successful when the first 15 minutes of the show has really good ratings. We know that we brought them to the table. We brought everybody to the show. And after the 15 minutes, it's kind of up to the programming team. That's when if the programming team also did their job too, because they cut the interest. People stayed there. Another element is getting people talking about the show before that, where there's that excitement. That's when you hear people talking about the show, that they've seen the promo. And so working with our PR department, when they're sending out our spots to people like and people are seeing that and generating that kind of buzz. So that all gets out there. And especially with the bigger campaigns, that it makes you feel good. I think the ultimate success is when you get peer recognition, because those are the people that understand everything that you have gone through as a creative. And so it might be an award like Promax, BDA, or Creativity, or an Emmy, and then there's, more on local levels, you've got the regional Emmys. And that's just from my little world of promotion in television. Another way that we can also measure it is Promax is this organization, and they've partnered with broadcast and cable. And so they offer this thing called Promo Mojo. And so it's kind of a weekly chart that kind of offers kind of the data of the week's top 5 TV promos, and they kind of rank it by ad impressions. And it's kind of a great tool to see kind of the attention score. So those are things that, they mainly follow the bigger campaigns that go off channel, but it's really good to see people are watching your spot, and you can see how long they're staying for. If you can get, where they're staying almost for the entire time of your commercial, you've actually done something, that people are paying attention to your spot. And it's kind of interesting. Some of the spots, when we've been able to hit their top 5, it's kind of like, wow, I didn't really think that. There's times when I thought, well, that may not have been my greatest spot, but in other spots, and it had like this outrageously high attention. And then other things that you spent you just spent so much time on, and people made the top 5, but people weren't paying attention to it nearly as much. So it's kind of interesting, just as a good tool to kind of use and kind of check out. But I would say those are for peer recognition. That's, that they understand you, and to get an award is the ultimate.
And my final question to you, during COVID, productions have obviously halted. How have you had to adjust, and what are some positive takeaways?
I think it's been a daily adjustment. It's getting better. I think we're kind of all getting used to it. But obviously the first thing that radically changed was the shoot. All shoots were just pretty much ground to a halt until like late summer. And so we have been in production. Our programming has been in production now since the summer. We're kind of on the promo sides, we're kind of gearing back up. In fact, I've got a shoot next week. And so I'll be very curious. You'll have to check back with me, because I will be monitoring it via Zoom. And it'll be my first time ever on doing that. So it's kind of interesting. I guess it's probably a production company's best, they probably love having the producer in a completely different state instead of them in Media Village over to the side. It's like, now we can get them like states away.
Right.
We can turn them on mute. So they probably love that. But I don't know, it's going to be really different. It's like, well, in some ways, I think you just have to be flexible. It may not be perfect. And it's just kind of like, but we are, part of what we do is we're problem solvers. So if it's not perfect, well, we can figure out what we can use, and we make the best of it. And it may end up coming out better than what we initially thought. So I think COVID has taught us all how to be agile. We've got to prepare to pivot on a moment's notice. I don't think it's really a time now for egos, because you've just got to get the job done. And I don't know about other people, but we are moving at lightning speed, and there seems to be a lot more work. There is definitely less people. And I think, it was already a crazy time in our industry, because we had the cord cutting, which has kind of been driving some layoffs and stuff. So when you add that with a lockdown, which affected a lot of our advertisers, it's just, now we're having to create a lot more content, because maybe we're filling in more commercial time. But like I said, we're able to think on a dime. And so we're able to spit out promos really quickly, trying to make people feel better with our talent. And so we were able to get talent just using their Zoom and sending us messages, or their phone or computer. So we were actually producing quite a lot of content, especially during the lockdown, that we hadn't even thought about, until that moment. It was just like, and our talent were more than willing to, to talk, to be part of this experience. So it was great.
Awesome. Always glad to hear how, everybody's making things work for them. And thank you for, taking time out of your schedule to come on the SANE Show. Again, I'm excited that we were able to have this conversation. I really enjoyed speaking with you. Definitely will have to have you back on in the future. So yeah, thank you again, Valerie, for taking time to come out on the SANE Show.
All right. Thank you very much, Cliff. It was great talking to you. It was a lot of fun.
Good. I'm glad you enjoyed yourself. And listeners, thank you guys for continuing to listen to the show, to continue to like, share, and subscribe. And remember, you're listening to the SANE Show, the show about nothing and everything. And until next time, we're out.